For North Island, Powell River.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to inform you that I will be sharing my time with the amazing member from Edmonton Griesbach. Mr. Speaker, when I reflect upon this report, I remember back in 2019 when it was initially tabled, and there was a sense of urgency from all parties in this House that this needed to be a priority for this government and that action needed to be taken. So it is frustrating to be here again having this discussion, knowing that this Parliament, this report from 2019 was retabled by the committee, waiting for a response from the government, which we have received, but it still doesn't address the key issues. And I remember when we retabled this, I wrote clearly in the supplementary report that it has been almost 3 years, or a full 3 years, and yet very little action has been taken on this critical issue. And I think a lot also of how many veterans that I've spoken to, how many veterans who have come to the House of Commons to witness us, and how many veterans have sat at the table of the Veterans Committee. And many times they are asked, would you serve again? And they always say yes. And what surprises me as well is how many of them are asked, would you encourage your own children or relatives to serve? And they say yes. So when we look at this reality of, at this moment, about 5,000 veterans, homeless, not with a safe place to live, dealing with things that most of us can't imagine, and they're still there. They're still there. And even though they're there, they would still serve our country again. Their commitment to service runs that deep. So I think it's important that we remember that when we have these discussions, that their dedication to serve is so profound, and that our dedication to serve should at the very least match theirs. And our service to veterans as parliamentarians is to make sure that they have the best services that they can, that they're accessible, that they're not waiting a long, long time, and that 5,000 veterans aren't going to go to bed tonight not having a safe home to live in. So when I think of this, I think of recommendation 3 that talked about Veterans Affairs Canada, working with Employment and Social Development Canada, and organizing support for academic research to continue its efforts to better understand veterans' homelessness, taking into account the overrepresentation of women and Indigenous people. You know, I think it's important to research this, but at the same time, we have to figure out what is going on and do actions. And I talked earlier today about London, Ontario, and the work that they've done collectively to identify veterans in their community that are homeless and to make sure that they have a safe place to live. So it is important that we recognize and we know that sadly, in those veterans that are homeless, women and Indigenous people, which all of us know in this place are still a very small part of the forces that serve us, are really high in this population of homelessness. So why is that? We need to figure out why that is. And we have to acknowledge that sometimes these groups are marginalized groups within a larger group, are even more marginalized by our systems. So it's important that research is done and that we honor that. But I come back to something else that I've also mentioned earlier today, which is the fact that the Auditor General in their report were very clear. Right now, Veterans Affairs Canada does not collect data in a way that allows them to identify where the problems are. So when we have veterans that don't have a home, when we have veterans that are waiting and waiting for the services that they need, when we see veterans falling through the cracks, feeling a great deal of distrust for the ministry, for the department, and for the people that work there, we have to also look at the fact that data is not there to provide the information to correct the problem. So what we see continuously is money being poured in, but we don't know that that money is being spent effectively because we don't know where there's bottlenecks. We don't know where there's blockages where veterans just simply can't get through. We don't know that. And that's on this government. It's on them to fix this core problem. And I know that we can talk about a lot of exciting things that get people really upset, but data, good data, means better services to veterans. So I'm very firm in this place that we cannot stop talking about how important this is, because it is a lack of data that means that our veterans don't get the services that they deserve. Recommendation 4 specifically talked about a partnership with other federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal organizations concerned with these challenges and the community agencies. Mr. Speaker, in my riding, I have 11 legions. Across some of the smallest communities you'll ever see, the legions are cornerstones to those communities because they provide support and services, and they create a place for community to get together. Those organizations want to do the work. And we asked this government to take all of those stakeholders and make sure to work with them to implement action plans such as the National Housing Strategy to actually get to the core and eradicate homelessness in veterans. So what we do know is there's piecemeal investments under 2021 under the National Housing Strategy. And it really focuses on Edmonton and Ottawa, but it doesn't have any concrete plan to address this. And that is a concern, and we know it can be done. Strategies can help veterans get into homes. In fact, and I will say it again, on February the 16th, 2021, London, Ontario did just that. They did it. Build for Zero Canada, working with the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness on the national effort to address the problem. Built for Zero Canada monitors the progress of 12 participating cities. It endorsed London's claim that the city had the first Canadian community to attain functional zero veteran homelessness status. So they did it because they focused on the issue, they gathered the relevant data, they looked at community-focused solutions, and they did it. This is a model that we could be implementing, working with communities, regions, with organizations, with municipalities to identify what's happening in your community. Can you help us identify veterans that are falling through the cracks? And I think this is important because I'm going to say this again. Veterans don't often complain. They're homeless, they're ashamed that they're homeless, like it's their fault, and they don't step up, they don't disclose. So many witnesses have come before us and said veterans often are homeless and they won't disclose that they're veterans, so we don't even know how to connect them with those resources. Shame, and also a feeling that the department won't do anything for them. Those things need to be addressed. They need to be taken seriously, and we need to demonstrate for veterans that there are solutions and that if they reach out for help, they're actually going to receive it. I think of not too long ago, I actually had a family member come to speak to me about a veteran in their family. She's an Indigenous woman. She spent many, many years serving this country, and now she's couch surfing. She's living on the edge because how she left was not a good way to leave. And I don't have permission to share what happened to her, but it was not a good thing. And she left in desperation for her own safety from the military. And now she's sleeping on couches, and she has so much need. But no matter how much her family loves her, no matter how much they reach out to her, they can't get her to ask for the services because she no longer trusts the system. We need to look at that. We need to own that in this House and stop pointing fingers and start saying we're going to stop doing that and we're going to start serving veterans. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I just want to talk about Recommendation 7, which is around Veterans Affairs Canada and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They signed a memorandum of understanding to make RCMP veterans eligible for the Veterans Emergency Fund under the same terms and conditions as Canadian Armed Forces veterans. We've heard from the president of the RCMP Veterans Association that this has not gone into place. Mr. Speaker, however people serve this country, we have to show them that on the other side of their service, they will be respected enough to get the support that they deserve. So I'm here in this House asking for that to be a reality because veterans served us. We best serve them back. Thank you.